Can you describe the condition of the property that was demolished?
Right before demolition, the property had burned at least once, but I know from just walking by that it was all overgrown. There were problems with the roof, the chimneys, really problems everywhere, foundation. It was an obviously not habitable house. In fact, the owner of the house who remained homeless in the area actually chose to squat in other houses, beyond this one, even though he owned this one. So it was in that bad a shape.
When we first came over, it was people were squatting in it, and for 2 years they were squatting and doing all kind of drugs. They had a couple of ODs over there, several ODs over there. So eventually, they set it afire. So it burned down. And after it burned down, it sit there for almost 2 years. It burned down, so the city finally got over and demolished it, and we are grateful.
Prior to the demolition, it was blighted, boarded up, overgrown. The roof was caved in. It was a frequent source of vandalism and attraction to vagrants and other problems in the neighborhood.
A definite eyesore. Persons had not only, property itself was deteriorating terribly, and then persons started to use it as a dumping ground. The porch was just filled with beer bottles and mattresses and all sorts of things that just even made it worse.
How did the blighted property affect you, the neighborhood?
Individually, not so much, but I mean for the immediate neighbors, which is a combination of folks, because the edge of the Huffman Historic District is at this fence, and then on the other side is technically another neighborhood. So I'm in Huffman, and for me, because this is so far out on the edge on a very isolated street, it didn't impact me or many of the neighbors, except for on Bell Street here, all that much. However, Burkhart, which is beyond this fence, was affected by it a lot. There's a lot of decayed property around here. There's a drug problem that persists. And this was because it is isolated, a central spot where that drug activity would occur. So yeah, it was bad. It's not as bad now, but yeah, it was a real problem.
With the drug addicts and stuff hanging around the church, coming up around the church, using drugs, doing all around the stuff. But after that, after the house left, the traffic left.
It affected myself personally. I lived on this street for 23 years, and it has been vacant for at least 20 years, and it made this particular street difficult. Property values to sell homes in the area. It increased the level of criminal activity along this stretch, and this street is our signature street. It really was kind of a blight on our beautiful Park Drive Boulevard.
Oh, of course, it was a definite eyesore, to be quite frank with you. I really became quite embarrassed that when my company or family showed up, they saw that property before they even got to mine. So yeah, it was quite embarrassing.
Did living near the blighted property cause issues such as inability to have homeowners insurance, frequent break-ins, property damage, lower property values?
As far as other issues, yeah, neighbors would often have things stolen from them. We recovered a couple of bikes in the neighborhood from the guy who owned this house. That was pretty common. There's a bag of trash there that was pretty common too. You'd have folks who were in pretty desperate situations who'd go through trash bins on trash day and just pull out a bag, and this is a good isolated spot to root through it to see if there's anything valuable. Of course, the bag gets left here.
And what we've seen, there's a demand to live on this particular street within the neighborhood, and there's also a demand for new construction, which is possible in a historic district. The remaining lots here are of interest to many people in the neighborhood who would like to purchase them and build homes on them to kind of replicate the architecture here. So we're very excited at the possibility of seeing homes on these lots again, which were originally single-family homes in the 1800s, and an opportunity for there to be new construction in a historic district, which hasn't happened here for decades.
My homeowner's insurance threatened to drop my homeowner's insurance due to the fact that the home was so close in proximity to mine that they were fearful if someone broke in, started a fire, or trying to keep warm or something like that and starting a fire, that potentially my home could be affected as well.
Has the demolition of the blighted property helped you, the neighborhood?
It's the first step toward recovery. I mean, in a historic district, it's difficult to get anything torn down, and we are trying to preserve an historic district, so we really don't want things demolished if we can avoid it. But this needed to be, not necessarily for any kind of preservation historical reason at all, obviously, but really the neighborhood was not viable. This block was not viable until it came down, and it's still at a point where there's a lot more work that needs to be done, but if this didn't happen, it was never going to start. This looks like the start of it. So there's plans for this area. Both owners next to me are working on their properties now. So it took this one to come down for there to be any signal that really anybody cares at all.
Well, it's cleaning up the traffic. That's one thing it does. So when I used to pull up in the driveway, I have people sitting all out high, some being OD'd and call the ambulance several times. So that is gone now. So that's one thing that it did. It really cleaned up this area.
As a preservationist, I don't like to see anything over 60 years torn down, but the truth is these properties are a magnet for arson, a magnet for crime, and have really made the Dayton neighborhoods places that have struggled to come back. We're fortunate here in South Park that our neighborhood has managed to come back over the last 30 years. This is a key linchpin property that will only help us continue to move forward. But overall, the demolition and the demolition money that's been received by the city has really helped a lot of struggling neighborhoods.